We want to thank each and every one of you. Shabbat Shalom for being with us here today, here in our Olive Tree Fellowship Teaching Center, Albuquerque, New Mexico. And those that are coming in through our Torah Unleashed YouTube channel. We always want to welcome my little granddaughter and grandson in South Dakota, Liberty and little Benjamin. They always watch Pa. They call me Pa. They always watch me from South Dakota over there. And those of you that are coming in from different parts of the world, make sure you subscribe to our channel and you put a like and even send us a comment. I get comments all the time, so please, if you like it, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask questions there also. We are happy to able to answer questions that you might have. Well, today we are going to do a summary of a 3-day seminar that I gave I've given at different places. And we are going to be talking today about Hanukkah. Now, this seminar is about 7 hours long, and I've given it in different places and taught it at GLC out of Texas and other places. And so today, this is just a summary. I've cut a lot of the slides out just to be able to present it this Sabbath and next Sabbath, part 1 today and part 2 next Sabbath. So this is, again, just a summary version of what we want to know about Hanukkah. So what is Hanukkah? What is this celebration about? Is it about what people would call the Jewish Christmas? Many people think that the Christians have Christmas, the Jews have Hanukkah. They are totally different. This is not the Jewish Christmas, even though they have a guy they call Hanukkah Harry. They have a Hanukkah bush. They have Hanukkah, different things that have to do with Hanukkah that kind of mirrors the Christmas season. And of course, it is called the Festival of Lights. So lights have always been part of Hanukkah. Now, one of the things we want to start talking about is there something more sinister to Hanukkah? Is there something there underneath? And so Hanukkah is not just a celebration. It is not just a time of fun and games, but in Hanukkah, we learn some secrets. Now, we're going to be talking about the secrets of Hanukkah and the coming anti-Messiah. It's interesting that we are going to discover some things about Hanukkah that maybe you never knew. Again, maybe you've gone through a Jewish synagogue or Jewish Messianic synagogue, or you heard about it, or you've seen things about Hanukkah. Well, let me tell you, what we're going to be teaching in the next two Sabbaths is what is the real understanding, the biblical understanding of what Hanukkah is. So we want to talk about the secrets of Hanukkah and the coming anti-Messiah, or raising up a Maccabee generation. Raising up a Maccabee generation. We are not of the same caliber in America of faith that the Maccabees had, that the Jewish people have had for countless of generations, that even some Christians in Africa, China, and other people, other places have. In Africa, this week, a pastor was beheaded. And as he was being beheaded, he just put his head down and they cut his head off. Are we ready for something like that in America, in the world? The anti-Messiah, if you read the book of Revelation and you read it literally, not figuratively, not as just a story, we're going to see that in the book of Revelation, it is the age of martyrdom. It's going to be a time of martyrdom. And we need to raise up a Maccabee generation that will be able to stand against the anti-Messiah. One of the questions is, am I ready? Are we ready? Is the body of Messiah in the world, and especially in America, are we ready for the coming anti-Messiah? Everybody says, I'm ready. But are we? So we're going to take Hanukkah, and we're going to take a journey. And again, like I said, this is just a summary of what we could actually do this as a 3-day seminar and learn even more things. Hanukkah, or Hanukkah, all kinds of different ways that people spell it and pronounce it, but it's called Hanukkah. And it is a celebration of dedication. Hanukkah is a setting apart of an object, something, of a purpose, of a person for sacred use. It is the holying, the kadoshing of something or someone to be used for holy purposes. Not just common. And always remember, the opposite of holy is not sin. The opposite of holy is common. What is common, what is regular, the Latin word for common is vulgar, common language. The Latin Vulgate was Latin of the people. And it's common, things that are common. We have cups that are common. That's a common cup. We use it for coffee, for water. But then there are cups, like our Kaddish cup, that we use only for blessing of the fruit of the vine. We don't use that for coffee or for drinking regular drinks. Those are set apart. There's objects that we have set apart. In fact, the word holy is actually in Hebrew a common word. And it's for anything you set apart. During the week, you might use paper plates, you might use plasticware. That little plastic plate that kind of has a little burn mark because you put it close to you use that all the time. Those are common dishes. But every family, you probably have a sideboard. You probably have something with glass in front, and there you have the holy dishes. Those dishes you only use when your mother-in-law comes. Or if you were to have a special guest, you bring out the china. You bring out the silverware. You're not doing stainless steel or plastic. You're silverware. That's holy. Those are sacred, set apart objects. In your home, we all have that. We all have that. They used to have what common wear, what you wear every day, and then Sunday's best. Remember, in the olden days, you used to wear your Sunday best, your Sunday suit. That's a set apart suit. You don't use that for mechanicking around the house. You only use that when you used to go to church or synagogue or go meet the president or something like that. Hanukkah is about consecration. It's about inauguration, starting something, setting something apart. That's what Hanukkah is about. It's also about rededication after defilement. So what do you do when you are clean? You are very clean, and then as on the way someplace something happens with a car, you have to change the tire and you get all dirty. Oh, what do? You go back home, you take a shower and get rid of all the grease, and then put new clothes on. In a sense, that's what Hanukkah is about. It's not only about initial dedication, giving our lives completely to Adonai, but if there's a defilement, if there's something that has gone wrong, that we rededicate, that we start over. And every one of us might have gone to or been involved in things that maybe we shouldn't have. We've backslid. And then we've rededicated our lives to Adonai. And Adonai is always there and always be there for someone that has to rededicate their life. When someone falls or you fall, don't say, hey, it's over with, that's it. No. We need to rededicate our lives. And we need to bless a brother or sister who has gone away and bring him back. Adonai is always talking about, bringing that lost sheep. The prodigal son always coming back. It's a revolution back to the beginning. And the beginning is always Torah. That's the foundation. Bringing people to Torah. We need to bring people back to where the beginning is all about. So why Hanukkah? Why? Isn't it just a Jewish holiday? I'm not Jewish. What does this have to do with me? In fact, many that might be listening, you are Christians. You go to a Christian church. You follow a Christian calendar. You follow Christmas, Easter. That's for us, they say. But Hanukkah and these other things, the Sabbath, that's for the Jews. Why Hanukkah? Why should every one of us here in this congregation and everyone that's listening, why should we pay attention to Hanukkah? Well, first of all, Hanukkah is not a holiday. The word holiday comes from the word holy day or Yom Kodesh. There are holy days in Scripture, in the Bible. There's one weekly holy day. This is it, the Sabbath. And there are 7 yearly holy days in the Torah. These are known as the Moedim or the appointed times. Hanukkah is not one of these. Hanukkah has nothing to do with a holiday. Even people call it a holiday. It's not a holy day. It is a day of celebration. The Moedim or the Feast of Yahweh are Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, weeks, trumpets, atonement, tabernacles. Hanukkah and Purim are not feasts of Yahweh, but they are celebrations of victory over the enemies of our faith. Hanukkah and Purim are like 4th of July's. They are like celebrations where we celebrate freedom and liberty. This is they're what we would call Jewish secular, not religious, but Jewish secular celebrations. But we learn a lot in both of them. In fact, in both of them, both Hanukkah and Purim, there's an enemy that wants to annihilate the Jewish people, that wants to exterminate the Jewish people. Both Antiochus and Haman wanted to annihilate, to exterminate the Jewish people, the Hebraic faith. But we celebrate that Adonai has given us victory. The importance of Hanukkah to the believer is about truth versus error. What is the truth and what is error? About honesty and deception. About the authentic, the real, and the counterfeit. It's about the holy versus the common, the profane, or the secular. It's about the clean versus the unclean. It's about the Messiah versus the anti-Messiah. This is a radical revolution in the body of Messiah that we want. We want to go back. We want to learn what Adonai wants us to know. So there are levels with their own secrets to Hanukkah. I'm going to present at least 7 levels that I've come up with. And they are, and I actually have them in chapter form, the Hanukkah's level. Because when we think of Hanukkah, we're not just thinking of one celebration, one dedication. We're going to learn some secrets about this. The prophetic understanding of Hanukkah is that Hanukkah, as we're going to see from the book of Daniel, is something that Adonai has shown us and has occurred and will occur again in our future. There's past Hanukkahs and there's future Hanukkahs. The historic level, and we're going to focus on this because this is how we learn about the present Hanukkah. The legendary level, there's all kinds of legends in Hanukkah. The messianic level, what does Yeshua have to do with Hanukkah? The moral level, and of course at the end, the eschatological level. Eschatology means the last days. So what does Hanukkah have to do with the last days, with the book of Revelation? Hanukkah is all in the book of Revelation, as we're going to see. So the word is Hanukkah, ekainia in Greek, in the Septuagint. It is found as ekainia, Hanukkah, dedication. It is not the feast of dedication, but the celebration of dedication. And so we are going to try to do a summary in 7 chapters, each with their own secrets. So today, let's start on the Hanukkah's level. Since the term Hanukkah means to dedicate, it is associated with the anointing and dedications of the tabernacle and the temple by Moses, Solomon, and Zerubbabel. It is when the altar in the temple had oil poured on it to set it apart, that this altar with what is called virgin stones, stones that were not cut with anything but just taken from the ground and set up as an altar. And this is the altar that Adonai has given us, and it is when it is set apart, and it is a 8-day celebration. A dedication always takes 8 days. 7 is the number of completion. 8 is the number of new beginnings. So it always starts with 7, and then the 8th is always a day of new beginnings. Sukkot is 7-day celebration, and then Shemini Atzeret, the 8th day, is the new beginning. It is the restart. And so we are going to see that Hanukkah is an 8-day celebration, and it always occurs, as we're going to see, in Sukkot. These dedications occurred on this 8-day platform, the tabernacle of Moses, 8 days. The first temple of Solomon, 8 days. The second temple of Zerubbabel, 8 days. So we're going to see this throughout our study. Of course, the word Hanukkah can be used for any religious and/or secular setting aside of an object, a person, a place for special use. Again, the dedication of a house, when you build the house, you dedicate the house to Adonai. In fact, what we do when we dedicate a house is we get a mezuzah and we affix it on the doorpost, saying that this house is dedicated to the commandments, the 10 commandments. And within the mezuzah, it is the 10 commandments are written. And so it's a dedication of vessels of silver, gold. You could dedicate money. An idol was dedicated. The pagans dedicate their idols. So again, this is not just the dedication among Elohim's people, but anyone could dedicate certain things. You could have a car dedicated for use to help the poor, a bus. You dedicate this bus to go pick up the poor. Anything could be dedicated and set apart. The tabernacle in the wilderness, this was the dedication. This was the Hanukkah. Remember, the word Hanukkah is all over. This was the Hanukkah of the altar. When it was anointed, Mashiach, we get the word Messiah, when it was anointed by the princes of Israel. And so the first Hanukkah, when we say, when was the first Hanukkah? Most Jewish people today, or a lot of Christians say, oh, the first Hanukkah was with the Maccabees. No. The first Hanukkah was when Moses dedicated the altar, Hanukkah, if we could use that word, the altar. The second was Solomon's temple. We call this the first temple. And in the 8th day, they made a solemn assembly, for they kept the dedication, the Hanukkah, of the altar 7 days, and the feast 7 days. So they celebrated for 7 days, and on the 8th day, there was a solemn, a new beginnings celebration, just like another Shemini Aseret here. And again, that was during a Sukkot when this occurred. And this was the second Hanukkah. The second Hanukkah. And then in the book of Maccabees, it says, it was also recorded how Solomon in his wisdom offered sacrifice of the dedication of the Hanukkah and completion of the sanctuary, as Moses had prayed to Yahweh. And fire came down from heaven and burnt up the sacrifice. So Solomon also prayed. And the fire from above consumed the burnt offering. He observed the 8-day festival, the 8-day celebration. So Solomon, not only did this occur with Moses, but now in the second Hanukkah, again, an 8-day celebration. And you're starting to begin now to see why in modern times they have what's called a Hanukkah, which is a modern invention, with 8 candles for the 8 days of dedication. The second temple of Solomon was destroyed. It was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar on the 9th of Av. And this began a 70-year captivity of the Jews. But then 70 years later, Zerubbabel came and he built a second temple over the ruins of the first temple. And the children of Israel, the priests and the Levites and the rest of the children of the captivity, kept the dedication of the house of Elohim with joy. So they dedicated the new temple, and this would be the third Hanukkah. This would be the third Hanukkah. And at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, they sought the Levites out of their places to bring them to Jerusalem to keep the dedication, the Hanukkah, with gladness, both with thanksgiving, with singing, with cymbals, psalteries, and with harps. So Hanukkah becomes a time of celebration, a time of joy, a time of giving Adonai that feeling of thank you, Father, that we have set this temple apart. And so they dedicated the temple. But here's where the Hanukkah that we're going to talk about comes in. Antiochus Epiphanes, in 167 before the Common Era, before Messiah, desecrated the temple and set up a statue of Jupiter Zeus. The temple was desolate for 2 years until the Maccabees came back and rededicated. This is the Hanukkah that most people celebrate today. So this is what is called an abomination of desolation, where something that is wholly set apart is desecrated by something that is unclean. And again, this happened with Antiochus, and it's going to happen again according to 2 Thessalonians 2, Revelation 13, Daniel 9:27, when the Antichrist sets up the abomination of desolation. And again, all these things have to do with Yeshua. Remember, Yeshua said when they set up the abomination of desolation, which we're going to talk about next week. The second temple is reinstated. The Maccabean rededication of Zerubbabel's temple, after it had been desecrated by Antiochus, and they rededicated the altar. In fact, we're going to see that they take the altar stones and they deposit them on the Temple Mount, on what is now called Solomon's porch. They took it apart because since the blood and juices of a pig were sacrificed on that holy altar, desecrating it, it couldn't be used no more. But because they were holy stones, they couldn't be just thrown away. So they were deposited and set apart and left there until 70 AD when the temple was destroyed. Now, the Maccabees rededicated Zerubbabel's temple. This is the fourth Hanukkah. So the Hanukkah that everybody celebrates as the first Hanukkah is actually the fourth Hanukkah. And a lot of people don't know that. Now, the second temple, it's interesting that Herod the Great saw that Zerubbabel's temple was just a small, modest temple. Well, Herod, in wanting to bring himself to be honored by the people, decided to construct a larger temple over Zerubbabel's temple. So he made this massive temple over Zerubbabel's temple, and then he had Zerubbabel's temple deconstructed, and again, those stones hauled away. So about from 19 years before Messiah until about 10 years before Messiah, he started doing that. In fact, when Messiah, the outer parts of the Temple Mount were still unfinished. You could still go underneath the temple and see the unfinished that occurred there. Now, to confuse things, Herod's temple is not called the third temple. It's still called the second temple because it was just what he called a remodeling, although it was a whole new temple. But it's still called the second temple. Now, the second temple was destroyed in 70 of the Common Era by Titus, the Roman prince. Again, according to Daniel and Yeshua's prophetic word. Both Daniel and Yeshua predict that the temple would be destroyed, and this was Herod's temple in 70 AD. Now there are two future Hanukkahs. The fifth Hanukkah is going to be the dedication of the third temple before the second coming of Messiah. This is the temple that we're going to see is wanting to be built today. The sixth Hanukkah is going to be of the fourth temple. We call this Ezekiel's temple, after the second coming of Messiah in the millennium. So there's two more temples that are still in the future with two more Hanukkahs. And the fifth Hanukkah, again, will occur at the beginning of the week of Daniel, probably built by the anti-Messiah, because he's going to go in and say, I am Elohim. And this will function for 3.5 years after, and then he will take over. In Daniel, he will put a stop to the sacrifice and oblation, and the wing of the temple will be the abomination of desolation. When you see, therefore, the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel, the prophet, set up in the holy place. He, as Elohim, sits in the temple of Yahweh, showing himself that he is Elohim. This is the Antichrist. And so again, the coming third temple is Antichrist's temple. And of course, today there's third temple fervor. People want to build a third temple. This is the present Jerusalem with an imposed third temple on the Temple Mount. This is where the Dome of the Rock is. If there's going to ever be built a temple there, something has to happen to the Dome of the Rock. And of course, Ezekiel's temple, in Ezekiel 43:4, the glory of Yahweh arrives at the temple by the east gate. And that's the east gate of the temple, of the sanctuary, not the east gate of the Temple Mount. One of the things that people, especially the Muslims, put a cemetery there so Messiah can't enter through what is called the Golden Gate. That Golden Gate, Yeshua never went through it. I just saw another. This was by an Israeli Messianic believer teaching that Yeshua went through that gate, the Golden Gate. Yeshua never went through it. That gate was always closed except once a year on Yom Kippur to take the goat to the wilderness, and when the ashes of the red heifer were burnt on the Mount of Olives. That was a Levitical gate, only for Levitical usage, not for common usage. And so even Israeli tour guides have that wrong. And again, this is going to be the sixth Hanukkah. Ezekiel's temple is going to be the sixth Hanukkah. And then in the eternity, the eternal temple, we are told there, I could not see any temple in the city since Yahweh Elohim Almighty and the Lamb were themselves the temple. So Yahweh and Yeshua, the Lamb, are going to be the temple that we are going to be in. Remember, the throne of Elohim is with man. And so here's just a little overview of the Hanukkahs. And this is the Hanukkah's level with its secrets. And now we will look at the first Hanukkah and the tabernacle of Moses, the second Hanukkah and the first temple of Solomon, and the third Hanukkah was the second temple of Zerubbabel, a smaller one. The fourth Hanukkah was the Maccabean Hanukkah in the Zerubbabel temple. And again, here's the abomination of desolation. Of course, this temple was rebuilt by Herod and bigger than that one. And then there's going to be a fifth Hanukkah with the third temple, the Antichrist temple. And then a sixth Hanukkah with Messiah, Yeshua, we call Ezekiel's temple, where Yeshua is going to be the high priest here. And then the seventh Hanukkah, the fifth temple, where Yahweh and the Lamb in the new Jerusalem, in the new earth, is going to be. So this is the Hanukkah's level. All these things that maybe some of you knew, and hopefully this might be new information to others. Now, there's a prophetic level for Hanukkah, and here is the blueprint. This is what I call the blueprint for the last days. From Daniel to the beast. The beast is the coming Antichrist, and that's the beast system here. Now, Daniel, around 600 years before Messiah, prophesied, and he prophesied about Alexander the Great, and he prophesied about Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, what's interesting is that when Daniel prophesied this, Antiochus was around 168. So we're talking about, 500 and some years, 400 and some years before the coming of Alexander the Great and the Greek system and Antiochus. Daniel was prophesying this. The book of Malachi was written 400 years before Yeshua, and the book of Malachi is the last book of the Bible. And between Malachi and Yeshua is a 400-year period where there was no prophecy, no word from Adonai. So the last book of the Hebrew Bible, of the Tanakh, 400 years before Yeshua, and then the coming of Yeshua around the year 6 BCE there. Now, this is what we call the historical level. This is the prophetic level. And then this is the eschatological level, the last days level. And of course, we're someplace around here between the year 2000 and the coming of the beast system. And this is modern history from the time of Yeshua. Now, Daniel prophesies. In the actual seminar, we go through every one of these prophecies of the what I call the histo-prophetic chapters of Daniel, where Nebuchadnezzar sees a statue, and Daniel later on sees 4 beasts, and then he sees another set of visions that he has. And it turns out that from looking back, Adonai was giving Daniel prophetic understanding of Babylon. And when Babylon was destroyed, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and a future kingdom. The future kingdom is the kingdom of the coming anti-Messiah. So Daniel prophesies these. And what's interesting is when Daniel prophesies this, he prophesies Antiochus Epiphanes to the T, but he's also going to prophesy the coming anti-Messiah, and it all has to do with Hanukkah. Now, between chapters 10 and 12 of the book of Daniel, he has visions and prophecies, and he sees the coming there of chapter 11:3 of Alexander the Great, the coming of the vile man, the abomination of desolation, the end of the persecutor, the end of Antiochus, and the coming anti-Messiah, and the time of the end. So, if you want to know about Hanukkah, read the book of Daniel. Study the book of Daniel. And forces shall stand on his part, and they shall profane the sanctuary, even the fortress, and shall take away the continual burnt offering, and they shall set up the abomination that makes desolate, the abomination of desolation. And from the time that the continual burnt offering shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days, a 3.5-year period. Now, what's interesting is that there are 2 abominations of desolations. Of course, one is Antiochus, and the other one is the coming beast system. And Daniel prophesies both of them. And both of them have clear understanding and how they look alike, and how Antiochus and the coming anti-Messiah are going to be very, very similar, because they will be possessed both by Satan. Now let's go into the historic level. Here's the prophetic level, and here's the messianic level, the historical level, the legendary level that we're going to see. Now, if you want to learn about Hanukkah, I would encourage you to read the historic books of the Maccabees. Now, the books of the Maccabees are not found in your regular Bible. Pretty much only the Catholic Bible has the book of Maccabees. Only the Catholic Bible has the book of Maccabees. Or you could get it online, or some places sell it. But first Maccabees 1:1 says, Alexander of Macedon, son of Philip, had come from the land of Kittim and defeated Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes, whom he succeeded as ruler at first of Hellas, Greek. Hellas is Greek, and is Greece. The name for Greece to them is Hellas. So this is Alexander the Great, whom we have seen in our history books. And he was an apostle of what we call Hellenism. Now, this is very, very important, especially with today, because he was an apostle of Hellenism, of a one-world system, of everybody being under him. He wanted everybody under. He wanted to be over everyone. And he brings all kinds of things into the world. He had the spirit of Nimrod, the spirit of a rebel. Nimrod was the first world ruler. Nimrod is the one that wanted to make everyone under him. Before Nimrod, it was always the father over the family. It was all family-oriented. It was everybody living in freedom. What Nimrod did is he developed an empire. He was the first emperor, the first potentate that wanted everyone, all these cities under him. So everyone that was free city-states were now under him. Hellenism is a worldview. It's a paradigm. It's a way of looking at things. Much of the world is Hellenistic today. When we say we live under a Greco-Roman system, it is really Hellenism. Even though Rome conquered Greece, Rome conquered them, Hellenism conquered Rome. Because for many, many years, Hellenism was what Rome was all about. In fact, the Romans spoke Greek. They didn't speak Latin until later on. So Hellenism is a one-world religion where everything, the education system, the entertainment system, the sports system, in fact, the Olympics have all to do with this. The religion, everybody under one religion, everybody under one system of thought. And Alexander the Great wanted to make the world under him. Well, of course, he died young. And he died young because he wanted to be this great guy. And he got involved with some people he shouldn't have got, and died of a very serious, bad disease. He comes to Jerusalem. In fact, the high priest at Jerusalem, had prophesied to him that he was going to be coming, and he kind of also came in to bring his brand of religion and lifestyle and to Israel. And at this point, Hebraic faith, remember, we're living about 300 years before Yeshua. The Jews, Judaism's, the Hebraic faith, after the book of Malachi, and if you read the end of the book of Malachi, you see that the Jewish people were getting away from Torah. And the book of Malachi is trying to say, come back to Torah. But all of a sudden, in those 400 years between Malachi and Yeshua, Judaism began to differ from Moses. Even from the time of the prophets. Why do we have the prophets? Because they're saying, come back, Israel. Come back, Judah. Come back, Israel. What happened, Alexander the Great brought a whole new system. This Hellenistic culture of government, religion, entertainment, sports, the economy, everything, all this, the Jews started liking. Very much like us today. Even though we are believers, even though we follow Adonai, there is part of our lives that is so ingrained in American culture, American politics, the American religion, everything, that sometimes that system takes us away from dedication to Adonai. We're not as dedicated as believers as we really should be. Even the holiest of us is not as holy as we should be, not as set apart as we should be. The world, the flesh, and the devil want to steal us every day. They want to steal us into their ways of doing things. Well, after Alexander died, 4 of his generals took over. The 2 that we need to look at is Seleucus and Ptolemy. These are Greek generals. And Seleucus took pretty much most of his empire. And Ptolemy took Egypt. And Seleucus became like a Babylonian king. And Ptolemy became like a Egyptian pharaoh. He even dressed as a pharaoh. Cleopatra and Ptolemy, Cleopatra was not Egyptian. She was a Greek. These were Greek people taking over the world. Now, watch this. Alexander wanted to control the whole world. Well, he dies. Now he has 4 generals. Guess what each one wants to do? Control the whole world. And so they fought against each other to see who would control. And of course, pretty much Seleucus and Ptolemy haggled over the land of Israel. Notice that Israel is right in the middle of Seleucus and Ptolemy's area. And so sometimes Israel was controlled by Ptolemy, sometimes by Seleucus, Ptolemy, Seleucus. Well, at the end, Seleucus took over. And what happened was that from Seleucus, one of his descendants was a wicked offshoot, Antiochus Epiphanes. He became the king in the year 107 of the kingdom of the Greeks. So here is a coin of Antiochus Epiphanes, and his idol, Jupiter Zeus, that they worshipped. He was the 8th ruler. He called himself Epiphanes, which means the visible Theos, or the visible God. That he was Jupiter Zeus. He believed that he was God. And he acted as though he really was. But the people called him Epimanes, which means the madman, which he was also. And so, excuse me. Now, the book of Maccabees tells us that there was some Jewish apostates. It was then that there emerged from Israel a set of renegades who led many people astray. Come, they said, let us ally ourselves with the Gentiles surrounding us to practice the Gentiles' observances. So they built a gymnasium in Jerusalem, such as the Gentiles have, disguised their circumcision, abandoned the holy covenant, submitting to Gentile rule as willing slaves of impiety. So it was from the inside. Yes, Antiochus came, but there was renegades, apostates on the inside that now became Hellenistic, that became very Greek, even hiding their circumcision. And of course, in the gymnasium, now this is, we would consider this gross, but in the gymnasiums, in the places where they ran, they did the Olympics, it was always with no clothes on. It was always in the nude. So now, because of that, they had to hide and get uncircumcised, whatever that means. Now, Antiochus comes, he sacks the temple, he steals all the vessels that of the temple, and he took off with all the silver, he took off with the gold, and he went back to Babylon. Now, he has martial law. He issued a proclamation to the whole kingdom that they were all to become a single people. Each nation renouncing their particular customs, all the Gentiles conformed to the king's decree, and many Israelites chose to accept his religion, sacrificing to idols and profaning the Sabbath. So again, he has martial law over the whole world that were under him. Now on December 25th, the people were driven by harsh compulsion to take part in the monthly ritual meal commemorating the king's birthday. And when a feast of Dionysius occurred, which is December 25th, they were forced to wear ivy wreaths and walk in the Dionysianic procession. I should know that. That's my name. Dennis is Dionysius. So they had a parade for Dionysius on December 25th, on his birthday. And they were forced to wear wreaths, ivy wreaths in their head. Now, what's interesting, and this is all I'll say of this, you could go study this on your own, but this is a fertility. The wreaths are a fertility object. And so they had this parade down Main Street with the boys wearing wreaths on their heads for celebrating his birthday. Again, they came to the holy altar, they sacrificed a pig and forced people to sacrifice to Zeus, which was himself, and other unclean beasts. He forbid circumcising of the children. They turned the temple into a brothel. They were not allowed. In fact, they burnt all the Torah scrolls. They burnt Torah scrolls. They did all kinds of awful things. Now remember, this is the past. This actually occurred in the past. This is the historic level. But prophetically, it's going to happen again. Now, we're already starting to see rumblings of this. We've been seeing rumblings of this, and in the future, it's going to get worse. This one world system, we're being kept at bay. We're being kept at bay right now. But there's going to come a time. There's going to come a time when what's going to happen is the world is going to reach such a breaking point that they will take over. The one worlders will take over. They will, because that's what the book of Revelation says. He sets up the abomination of desolation, which makes the presence of Adonai leave the sanctuary. In fact, we are told that the Spirit of Yahweh got up from the sanctuary and went towards the Mount of Olives turns around, looks at the sanctuary, and then goes over the Mount of Olives. The actual presence of Yahweh actually left the temple and went over the Mount of Olives. And so on the 25th day of the month of Kislev, right now we're in the month of Kislev, the 25th day will be Monday, beginning on Sunday night is the 25th day of Kislev. And every year it's different. Sometimes it occurs with December 25th. Sometimes it doesn't. This year it doesn't. It was offered, sacrifice was offered on the altar erected on top of the burnt offering to Jupiter Zeus. Now this is a statue of Jupiter Zeus, which is in the Vatican, which is called the statue of St. Peter. But before it was a statue of St. Peter, it was a statue of Jupiter Zeus. And you could see that his foot is very, very shiny from people touching it after all these years. Not long after this, the king sent an Athenian senator to force the Jews to abandon the customs of their ancestors and live no longer by the laws of Elohim. Also to profane the temple in Jerusalem and dedicate it to Olympian Zeus. They also brought into the temple things forbidden, so the altar was covered with abominable offerings prohibited by Torah. A man could not keep the Sabbath or celebrate the traditional feast, nor even admit that he was a Jew, ordering the neighboring Greek cities to act in the same way. And so 2 women were arrested for having circumcised their children, were publicly paraded about the city with their babies hanging on their breasts, and then thrown down from the top of the city wall. Others were assembled in nearby caves to observe the Sabbath in secret, were betrayed, and all burnt to death. So he did awful things. He did awful things to our people. And so they come to Modin, where a family of Matthias lived. And as for the king's order, we will not follow them. Matthias said, we shall not swerve from our own religion, either to the right or to the left, which is what Torah says. Don't go to the right, to the left. Do not add, do not take away. And so this priest, Matthias, and his 4 sons, when the man came to sacrifice the pig, he got the knife and he killed the officer. And they started 2-year guerrilla warfare. And this is the one we call, the family of Matthias was called the Hasmonean family. And Matthias was the dad, and he had 4 sons, John, Simeon, Judah, Eleazar, and Jonathan. These are the 4 sons, and they all became a guerrilla warfare against. This is what we call the revolution of the Maccabees. And there was battles fought, as you read the book of Maccabees, for at least 2, almost 3 years there. There's 2 books of Maccabees. One does not follow the other. One is the story of the Maccabees and the dedication of the temple, the Hanukkah. The other are 2 letters from the Maccabees written to the Jews in Egypt, and a letter to a man named Aristobulus of Egypt. So the second one are just 2 letters, and the first one is actually a history. I would encourage you to read both books of the Maccabees and learn this story of Hanukkah from there. Now, he selected priests who were blameless and zealous for Torah. This is the Maccabees. To purify the sanctuary, remove the stones of the pollution to some unclean place. They discussed what should be done about the altar of burnt offering, which had been profaned, and very properly decided to pull it down rather than later be embarrassed about it, since it had been defiled by the Gentiles. They therefore demolished it, and depositing the stones in a suitable place on the hill of the dwelling, this is the Temple Mount, to await the appearance of a prophet who should give a ruling about them. Now, this gets interesting. This gets nice. They get the altar stones, and they demolish them, and they put them in a suitable place at the corner of the Temple Mount. Now, this corner, Herod made some additions to it, but this is the original corner, and that's where they deposited these demolished stones. They had to break it up. And there, they said, we can't throw them away, but we have to keep them because they were holy, but they were profane. So what do we do? Let's put them here until a prophet comes. Until a prophet comes. Guess who that prophet is? Yeshua. And what happens is they ask Yeshua who he is, and we'll get to that in the messianic level next week. So they get these stones and they put them away. On the 25th day of the 9th month, Kislev, in the year 148, they rose at dawn and offered a lawful sacrifice. So 2 years later, on the 25th day of Kislev, it was profaned. 2 years later, on the 25th day of Kislev, it was rededicated and offered a lawful sacrifice on the new altar of burnt offering, which they had made. The altar was dedicated, Hanukkah, to the sound of hymns, zithers, lyres, and cymbals, and all the same time of year, on the same day on which the Gentiles had originally profaned it. And so this is the Hanukkah that Judaism and most people know about today. This is the Maccabean Hanukkah and its connection to Sukkot and the establishment of the Hanukkah, the present Hanukkah celebration. It was a belated celebration of Sukkot, which the Jews had not had since they were, in revolt. Sukkot is the appointed holy day. Sukkot is 8 days with feasting, prayer, and festivities. Now we recommend you, in 2 Maccabees, this is a letter, that you keep the feast, the celebration of shelters, in the month of Kislev, the celebration of Sukkot in Kislev on the 9th month. We shall be celebrating the purification of the temple on the 25th day of Kislev. We consider it proper to notify you that you too may celebrate it as you do the feast of Sukkot and the fire that appeared when Nehemiah, the builder of the temple and the altar, offered sacrifice. Again, on Sukkot. So now, since they were up in the mountains for Sukkot, here, and that happens in October, now in December, the 9th month, the month of Kislev, now they could celebrate Sukkot at the rededication of the altar stone. For 8 days they celebrated the dedication of the altar, joyfully offering burnt offerings, communion, and thanksgiving sacrifice. They kept the 8-day festival days with rejoicing in the manner of the Feast of Shelters. Remember how not long before, at the time of the Feast of Shelters, they had been living in the mountains and caverns like wild beasts with guerrilla warfare. Judas and his brothers then said, now that our enemies have been defeated, let us go up and purify the temple and dedicate it. Judas with his brothers and the whole assembly of Israel made it a law that the days of the dedication of the altar should be celebrated yearly at the proper season for 8 days, beginning on the 25th day of the month of Kislev, with rejoicing and gladness. So now, this is what we do. We follow these days. Again, this is not a feast of Yahweh. This is a celebration that our enemies have been defeated. And we will stop here and continue next week. Let's go ahead and stand. Father, we give you honor and glory. We give you praise. For you are the Holy One of Israel. And you have set us apart. And in Yeshua, we are set apart unto salvation. And we have dedicated our lives to serve you, not to serve the world, not to be secular, not to be common, but to be holy and righteous. And we pray, Father, that as we continue studying about Hanukkah, that the secrets that maybe have been hidden can be exposed, and that we could learn, study, and even rededicate our lives unto you. We give you honor and glory. We give you praise. Yeverechecha Yahweh vaish merecha. Air Yahweh panavelecha vichunecha. Asa Yahweh panavelecha vayasem lecha shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day and a good week. Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries. Thank you for joining us on our channel. If you have enjoyed this teaching and would like to see more, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so that you can be notified when we have new videos. If you would like to support Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries, please visit us at olivetreefellowship.com or torahunleashed.org. We thank you for your past support and hope to continue with you. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day. Shalom, shalom y bienvenidos a Olive Tree y a la Torah Desatada. Les doy gracias a ustedes y a Adonai por su apoyo que nos han dado aquí. Y si quieren continuar a hacer una donación, pueden ir aquí en torahunleashed.org o en olivetreefellowship.com y ahí pueden dar una donación. Su apoyo, su ayuda es importante en estos días. Shalom, shalom.